Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Dotson, and I'm the founder and program coordinator for Highland Park Poetry and your host for Poetry Today. And I am thrilled to be here with Jan Bottiglieri. She lives and writes in suburban Chicago. She is a professional editor, a managing editor for the poetry annual Rhino. She holds an MFA in poetry from Pacific University. Jan's work has appeared or is forthcoming in more than 40 journals and anthologies. She's the author of 2 chapbooks, A Place Beyond Luck and Where Gravity Pools the Sugar. And she was last here on Poetry Today in 2015, we realized, for her first full-length collection called Alloy, which came out from Mayapple Press. But she's here today because we're promoting Everything Seems Significant, the Blade Runner poems, which was published this year by Blaze Vox. You can also find out more information about Jan and all her publications on her website, janbottiglieri.com. And I just want to hold up this. This is the new book that we're promoting, especially today. Everything Seems Significant, the Blade Runner poems. And wow, what a unique,
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me too, Jennifer. I'm really excited to talk about the book. It meant a lot to me to write these poems. The movie Blade Runner has always meant a lot to me, so it's, I think, going to be fun to talk about the book.
So maybe that's a good place to start. Mm-hmm. Why Blade Runner as a source for...
Well, Blade Runner, when it first came out, got some mixed reviews, but since 1982, when it was released, it's kind of become, I don't want to say a cult classic, but certainly a seminal film for movie lovers, for science fiction lovers, for people who are a fan of the director, Ridley Scott, who's done a lot of amazing work. And I loved it immediately when I saw it. I've always loved it. And when I was thinking about the kind of book I wanted to write next, the kind of poems I wanted to write next, I suddenly had the idea that I'd love to do a project based around the movie. And when I first had the idea, it sort of just lodged like a ray of light inside of me. I felt like I've got to do it. In fact, when I was beginning the project, which would have been back in maybe 2016, I did some research first because I couldn't believe that someone hadn't already written poems about Blade Runner. It seemed like such a perfect type of film to inspire poetry. And certainly there have been a lot of books written about the movie, and about the genre, and about the movie's place in the genre or in film history, but not a lot of poetry. So that was my job.
Okay, all right. Well, and I have seen some anthologies about poems about film, or poems about movies, or going to the movies, or specific films.
Yeah.
So obviously there is an area where people enjoy that, you know. But,
and I have met other poets who have come forward and said, "Oh, I have poems that mention Blade Runner," or "I have poems even, about Blade Runner," and it's always exciting because it makes me want to say, "See, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who sees something in this movie and in the way poetry works that seems compatible." So.
Okay. Well, now the film though was based originally on a book, right?
That's right. So my book is actually a book of poems about a movie that was about another book. So,
okay, all right.
So I think that's kind of a really interesting path to follow. And the book is by Philip K. Dick, and the book is called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And there have been other movies made out of Philip K. Dick's work. He's really hard to film because he's really a writer of ideas.
Okay.
And the movie Blade Runner, the title is not the only thing that's different from the original source book by Dick. It's the the movie is quite different from the book.
Oh, okay.
Quite
I never
different.
read the book. I only saw
Yeah,
the movie.
it's quite different. And yet, Philip K. Dick, who unfortunately passed away before the movie was released, when he saw some of the early footage from the film, said to the filmmakers, "You got inside my brain."
Wow.
Which,
okay.
to me, just reinforces this idea that the movie is about more than its own narrative and its own, decoration and whatever, but it's really about some interesting and big ideas about ourselves and about our future, and that was important to Dick, and it was clearly important to the filmmakers as well, and that's part of what I've tried to pull into my poems as well.
Well, and now, of course, when the film came out, I don't think we had a lot of AI, but now we are living in a world where we do have more, the robots in industry, and they have personal,
absolutely,
robots, and so much is automated. And you talk about, so the current generation of people who are doing stuff think of AI as artificial intelligence as like,
absolutely,
it's a given.
Yeah. And there's fear around that. There's fear around. In the movie, there's the company that produces the replicants, which are like the robots, the intelligent robots. Their motto is more human than human. And I think that's what's scary about it. Because are there degrees of being human, and how do we judge that? And how would we be judged? And how would we fare against an intelligence that was even more human than our own?
Yeah.
So I think even that idea of artificial intelligence is such an interesting one to think about and explore through art. Because personally, I think art is something that makes us human, right?
Right. Okay. So
this juxtaposition of poetry as an art and filmmaking as an art, and even novel writing as an art, this juxtaposition of all those different arts, I think it's a natural to explore that question of what it means to be human, and are there degrees of that, and how does that inform our choices and our decisions?
So I guess my biggest question is, does anybody who hasn't seen the movie or hasn't seen the movie since 1982 need a refresher on the film before they can enjoy your poems, or do you think your poems can?
Well, obviously, I'd like to say these poems are perfect and they stand alone with no knowledge of the source material. But I will admit that because I'm writing so in such conversation with the movie, it would help if you've seen the movie. It would help if you've seen the movie fairly recently, and it would help if you've seen the particular version of the movie that I used as my source material for the book. Because this is a movie where there are at least 7 different versions available, from the original theatrical release to the director's cut, like on this VHS that I've brought, to the final cut, which is what I've used as my source material for this book. And there are some very minor differences, but also some very significant differences.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to identify. What are some of the big differences between the films?
One of the biggest is the ending. And Ridley Scott, the director of the movie, has been on record as saying the final cut version, which is the most recently released, is his favorite. It has the most different ending, and it's the one, I think, and that's because it's the director's favorite. It's also my favorite. That's why I used it as the source for the book. And I think the ending, I think it's significant, to use a phrase from the title, it's significant that the ending is different, is a little ambiguous. I think that opens up a lot of the questions that I'm exploring in the book. So I think it was the best fit.
I wonder if in 1982, it's likely that Hollywood was like, oh, no, the American public can't possibly, accept anything but a clear
and happy ending, which the original theatrical cut kind of has. So I don't personally think that the ending of the final cut of the movie is unhappy specifically, but it is a lot more ambiguous.
Right.
So, I think that certainly supports the themes of the movie. It supports some of what I'm trying to do with the book. So it was really more interesting for me to stick with that version. I hope it will be interesting for people who would like to watch the movie and then read the poems, or read the poems while they're watching the movie, or maybe read the book and then watch the movie. I think they are in conversation with each other.
Sure.
And it's a great movie, so
Yeah.
it might not be for everyone.
Well, now,
it's a
and
great
then, of
movie.
course, you have to add on to, do you at all reference the sequel that came out recently?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. That was a decision because I started writing this book when the news of the sequel pretty much just broke in.
Okay.
And for a long time it was titled Untitled Blade Runner sequel, which is also a fantastic movie. People who embrace the original movie have, in large part, embraced the sequel. Some people like it more, some people like it less. But I just wanted to, the process that I used, it was best to just stick with the original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we better dive in. So do you want
Okay.
to
I'd love to.
start with the poem that...
I'd love to. So the process I used to write the book was, most of us watch movies, even though I did bring a VHS, most of us watch movies at home on DVD. And most of us know that there are chapter stops on a DVD where you can fast forward, where did I leave off, So to write the book, I just started with the final cut version on Blu-ray, DVD, and used the chapter stop titles as the titles of the poem, and then ordered them in order of those chapters. So this, I believe, would be chapter 7, near the beginning. And I also bring elements of my own life into the poems because I think that's important. We don't, as an ekphrastic work, meaning, poetry written in response to another work of art, it's a conversation, right? So the movie's in conversation with the book. My book's in conversation with the movie. I'm in conversation with my experience of the movie, and hopefully the reader will be part of that conversation.
Okay.
So this poem is called Interrupted Sushi. I believe it's chapter 7 of the DVD. And I reference Deckard. He is the lead in the movie. He's played by Harrison Ford. He is the Blade Runner, whose job it is to find and kill the replicants. And I reference Jake. Jake is my son.
Okay.
Interrupted Sushi. There has to be a poem about the white dragon, texts Jake. I've sent him a photo of my ramen, captioned, and noodles. On screen, an origin. The woman smiles, swallows her pill. Themes emerge. 2, 2, 4, Dex says, doubling down, then giving up. Gaff's city speak repeated. Tell him I'm eating. No choice for Deckard but to take the bowl with him. Something always fascinated me, Jake types. That noodle stand looks miserable. Food is hardly gourmet. Why does Deckard go back? He guesses comfort food. But how can he recall his high chair? My face, younger, yes, hovering above. Blue smile, the blue bowl. Are you my angel, my little bird? I show him how to tilt his head back and open, feed him a noodle, another. Not a year old, but a good mimic. Tilts his head back, mouth open, soft carol. Catching my eye with his, we share the whole bowl like this. Now the spinner rises through mist. Rain veil, lens flare. The woman smiles again, over the landing threshold.
Wow.
So, in I'm actually wearing a T-shirt for the White Dragon.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Which is a fictional noodle bar that
Okay.
figures in the movie. It seems sort of like the McDonald's of Los Angeles
Okay.
of the movie.
All right.
They're kind of everywhere. And in this scene, Deckard is eating at the White Dragon, and it does look pretty miserable. He's outside in the rain eating his ramen. And it just, when I see that scene, it sort of ties back to that memory of feeding ramen to my baby when I was little, when he was little.
And talk about references. I know your baby is no longer a baby.
No, he is not.
And he's also interested in film too.
Yes, he
it's
is.
like a whole family pursuit.
That's right. That's right. He lives out in LA now, and on one of my recent trips out to visit him with my husband, we drove around to different filming locations for the movie Blade Runner.
Fun.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Cool. So. Yeah, and I should mention that one of the fun things about having the book come out this year is that the movie Blade Runner is actually set in November 2019.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even remember that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's really interesting, like we've arrived at the future depicted in the movie. So it's interesting to think about that vision. And how it's the same and how it's different, where those parallels are. So, yeah.
Wow.
So.
Mind blown. Okay. Right. If
You want to
yeah,
know?
I want
Sure,
more.
let's
I'd love
go
more.
for it. All right, I'll kind of read in order. So that was, like I said, I think that was chapter 7 from early in the movie. Let me see. Yeah, here's one from a little bit later in the movie. And again, it kind of pulls in some of my own experience. I mentioned Deckard again, Deck. I mentioned Gaff again. He's another police officer who's kind of at odds with Deckard. And it mentions the White Dragon again. So,
Okay.
so it seems like, even though we're jumping ahead a bit in the movie, Deckard is looking for the replicants. And one thing that we've noticed about the replicants is that they collect photographs, which is weird because they don't have families, they don't have memories, so why do they collect these photographs? This chapter is called, or this poem is called, Leon's Hotel Room. Leon is one of the replicants. Leon's Hotel Room. Champaign-Urbana, 1985. I've taken a dingy efficiency my final semester. 1 room with bath, 8 blocks off campus. Faucets steady drip. I grew to love it. My little meals of ramen and Coke. My records, photos, books. Origami I'd folded, strung above the bed. And near the door, Rick Deckard's face. Glossy, larger than life. There was no place he could not see me. I loved the scrape on his cheek, which I felt was real, that is, Ford's first, then Deck's by proxy. A heel need. I was just off chemo, pale, prone to bruise. Across from the Yukon, Gaff and Deck pause in the future's perpetual rain. Steam from grates. 1187 Hunterwasser. The busted fixtures, cicada buzz, the scale like a dirty teardrop, the fingertip lifting it to light. Deck's hands dissolve to Gaff's, crafting the crude man, head ready to strike into flame. Gaff must know Leon will see it. And there Leon is, crossing to a White Dragon. We hear that same electric buzz as he watches his own window. Behind it, Deckard finds the hidden photos, shuffles them like a tarot. The wheel, the twins, the pensive man. Memory, that broken God, that lens.
One thing I was going to ask, because your book is so specific, how was it that you got found a publisher? I mean, does it
I was worried about that. I was worried about that. But I don't think as writers we should ever.
Oh, no.
Yes,
No,
I don't think we should write towards what can I write that will get published. You have to write what's in your heart, really. You have to write kind of where it takes you. So I just kept my fingers crossed, and I kind of looked around at different books that I liked, different poets that I liked, different poets that I felt were doing work similar to mine, or that I felt was work kind of inspired by the same, maybe pop culture connections. One poet, a Chicago poet I really love, is Tony Trujillo. He's a friend of mine, he's working on a really long series of poems inspired by the Gothic soap opera Dark Shadows. I don't know if you remember Dark Shadows. Yes, yeah. So that's being published by BlazeVox Books, and so I checked out the BlazeVox site. I checked out some of the other books that they've published. You order books from that sound interesting from presses that you're interested in. And I just took a chance and I sent it out to BlazeVox, because I sent it out to a couple different publishers, but BlazeVox was really my first choice because they kind of leaned into this offbeat stuff. There was a strong sort of pop culture conversation element to a lot of the books that they were publishing. They seemed like a really supportive press that made beautiful books, and they said, let's do it, and I was just ecstatic. So
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I was really happy.
So how long has it been since you got notified that they were interested?
Well, not that long.
Oh, okay.
I talked to the publisher and I said, I'm really, really interested in doing what it takes. Now that you're interested in the book, you're interested in the project. I had to wait till I had a complete manuscript, and maybe not all writers would, but I wanted to really make sure that I could finish the project. So there's, I think, 48 poems in the book. It took me 2 years, so I didn't want to, before I was able to finish it, I have a day job, I could just write away.
Poets have a day job?
Yes, Jennifer, we do.
I thought so. I thought I couldn't be the only one. Okay.
So I wanted to make sure the manuscript was complete. It took me longer than I thought it to write. So I didn't send it out till it was complete and what I felt really polished and finished. So by that time, once he said, let's do it, I contacted the publisher and I said, I'm really interested in getting this book out in 2019. Do you think we can make it happen? Yeah. And again, he said, it's going to take some work with revisions and getting the things in order that we need to get in order, but yeah, we can. So he was really supportive of that. And so it was less than a year.
And so how perfect that you're in time for the November 2019.
That was my goal. That was my goal. Yeah, because it's just, I think Blade Runner is such an important movie to so many people.
So do you know, are there going to be like a whole bunch of Blade Runner themed events?
There are a few events happening. There's various screenings in different parts of the world and different countries that I've heard of. There's a Blade Runner podcast that I listen to, which is called Shoulder of Orion. If you're interested in Blade Runner, it's a really cool podcast you want to check out. Yeah, a whole podcast. Every episode, Blade Runner. Just putting that out there. It's great. But I think that speaks to the movie, that between the characters and the themes, there's always more to talk about. And they're doing a cool event out in Los Angeles, which is where the movie takes place, I think November 13th. I'm trying to get some readings out in Los Angeles because we were going out there to visit my son anyways.
Well, now, speaking of readings, you have one in Highland Park for, what's the date, November?
Oh my gosh. 22nd, I think it's
early. Yeah, it's not the... Yes. We put it not on the weekend of Thanksgiving. So.
Right, and because the weekend of Thanksgiving is when I'm going to be out in LA.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that. I know. So anyone who's interested in this idea of, this important, really seminal movie taking place in November 19, who wants to kind of celebrate that, I think they should come out to Highland Park for the reading.
Yes.
Don't you think so?
Of course.
I think that would be fantastic.
That would be great. Well, I think we've got time for at least one more poem.
Love it. Okay. I love it. Okay. Let's do one from later in the later in the book, later in the movie. And I want to say that a lot of the poems, so I know you like to write in form sometimes too, and I really do as well. Like the one poem I just read, actually the first 14 lines of the poem were in a sonnet form.
Oh,
Then
okay.
as the poem switches from my point of view to the film's point of view, the form changes.
Oh,
So I
neat.
use a lot of different forms throughout the book. I have a whole little collection as an appendix in the back of ghazal poems in the voices of the characters.
Oh, neat.
So that's something kind of interesting. So this poem is from near the end. This is the very final scene of the movie. You'll hear me talk again about Deckard, and and Gaff again, the other police officer who's chasing him, and the woman he's with is Rachel, who is a replicant he was supposed to kill, but who instead he's fallen in love with. It starts with a quote from the poet Rilke. But when can we be real? When does he pour the earth, the stars, into us? The poem is called Souvenir. A cigarette that bears your lipstick traces, an airline ticket to romantic places. My mother's voice sings on the souvenir record I've found. Chicago, about 1941, memento of her courtship with my father. The voices I have lost, the past I have inherited, quavering up the needle, a nostalgia. The dark groove of memory that spirals us toward our center. These foolish things remind me. The shush of the elevator door. In the hallway, wind rush, sound of something left opened. Blue tangle in the bedroom. Deck lowers his gun hand to draw back that veil. Do you love me? I love you. That shawl-neck sheep's wool sweater he wears, and her fur, both must be artificial? Of course. To be beckoned out is to be changed. He speaks her name, a petal. They step into the passage. Like Orpheus, root is orphan, servant, slave, but mirrored. Who is being saved? A new selfness. How can it not, we, know what it is? She crosses the threshold. Only then does Rick, from strong arm, sovereign, brave, look back, the shine of silver foil in light. He hears Gaff's voice, chorus, ghost, dream. From its edges, the unicorn gleams, bursts like a star. He crumples in his hand. The shush of the elevator door.
So you mentioned Orpheus in there. Is that the one where is not supposed to look back?
Right.
Okay.
He goes to rescue his beloved from Hades, and they allow him to take her as long as he doesn't look back, but she's falling a little behind him. So he looks back at her. And in the movie, it's interesting, I think I got that Rilke quote from one of his sonnets to Orpheus.
Oh, okay.
So in the movie, it's significant that he actually waits until Rachel passes him before looking back. And what he sees is a silver unicorn, origami, on the floor, which shows that indeed the man who's been chasing them, Gaff, had been there, but had left her live. So,
Wow.
spoilers for Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah, right.
But if you haven't seen it by now,
Yeah.
get on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jan.
Yeah, this
for
was a
coming,
lot of fun.
and-
Thank you for
and
having me.
I'm so excited about your book. I can't wait to read all of it.
Thanks.
And to see you when you come back in November.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Thanks
And
so much.
everybody else.